Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining me tonight. I heard one of my favorite preachers preach a sermon the other day on 1 Kings 12, and which I liked the way he went with it, but while he was preaching, I was thinking something completely like another direction. So I want to go there today. And so I'm going to start reading in 1 Kings 12. So what had just right before this had happened is, Solomon had just died and the kingdom split. And so Rehoboam and Jeroboam were the two kings. And so anyway, I'm going to read 28. Let's see. Well, actually, I'm going to start in 25. So it says, Then Jeroboam built Shechem in the mountains of Ephraim and dwelt there. Also, he went out from there and built Penuel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, Now the kingdom may return to the house of David. If these people go up to offer sacrifices in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then the heart of his people will turn back to the Lord. And Rehoboam, the king of Judah, and they will kill me and go back to Rehoboam, king of Judah. Okay, so right there, he's worried that when they travel to Jerusalem, which is where they had to go for tabernacle, they was worried that they would stay with Rehoboam since it was closer to there. So he's already jealous and worried. So he says, Therefore the king asked the advice, and he made 2 calves of gold and said to the people, It is too much for you to go to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, O Israel, which brought you up from the land of Egypt. And he set one up in Bethel and the other one up in Dan. Now this thing became a sin, for the people went to worship before the one as far as Dan. And he made shrines on the high places and made priests from every class of people who were not of the sons of Levi. Okay, so he's got two places for them to set up to worship. So one is, as far as his property went one way, and as far as it went basically the other way, but it still kept them from going toward Jerusalem and to Rehoboam. So I'm going to continue. He says, Jeroboam ordained a feast on the 15th day of the 8th month, like the feast that was in Judah, and he offered sacrifices on the altar. So did at Bethel, sacrificing the calves that they had made. And at Bethel, he installed the priests of the high places which he had made. So he made offerings on the altar which he had made on the 15th day of the 8th month, in the month in which he devised in his own heart. And he ordained a feast for the children of Israel and offered sacrifices on the altar and burnt incense. Okay, so you notice it said on the days he had made. He set it up. So he created his own metal or golden calves again, and he created his own gods, and he set up the feast just like religion, and he set up, the memorials and everything just like they would if they went to church went to Jerusalem. So he's making it look real. And what was, and same thing my preacher said, the surprising part was how easy it was to convince them to not go. It didn't take much. Just say, here's the convenience. You can stay here. You don't have to travel all the way to Jerusalem. You just stay right here and worship, and it's the same. And so, earlier they were easily, to rebel against, what the king had said. And but now this idea of convenience, they're like, oh yeah, that sounds good. So they decided to stay, and so surprisingly, I thought that's a lot like today. In the fact, we want things to be easy. We will fight, we are fighting people. We will fight for our politics. We will stand and protest for war. We fight over genders, rights, and people can get worked up over anything that's important. So how important is God to you? Because I think when it comes to God, we choose the easy road. When it comes to standing faithfully, we sometimes are like, well, church is too far, or I'm just tired. I've worked all week. I'm tired. I can just watch it online. And so little by little, this convenience replaces commitment. And we are in the era of convenience. And don't even get me started like with food right now. Everything, the prepackaged and pre-boxed, I'm digging into all of that and the harm that it does to the body. And I eventually am going to tie that back into the Bible when I get my study all ready. But the more I'm learning about toxic foods and toxic chemicals and all that stuff, I mean, it's a whole nother rabbit hole I am going to go down, though, in the future. So, but anyway, we are, we want easy money. We want, people want high-paying jobs with very little effort put in. We want easy religion. And I think that when COVID happened and everything shut down, I was thankful for the opportunity to be able to still have church through Facebook or YouTube or however it was, a little bit of both. But it allowed me to avoid the outbreak, and I'm a little more conservative than some people because I have bad lungs and, low immunity. So I was thankful for that. But folks, that was like 6 years ago. And people are still sitting at home, watching it on TV, and they've not went back out to church. And, so it was a blessing. It is a blessing, clearly if someone is sick or they're too old to drive or they're traveling, some physical reason that they cannot get to church, then it is a great, huge blessing. But that's not meant to be a tool to abandon, what God has called us to do. He has said in Hebrews 10:25, not to forsake the assembling of yourselves. And he never designed for Christianity to be sitting at home alone on a couch watching it. And I want to say this very carefully, but there are a lot of depressed people in the world, and a lot of people are depressed and they choose to stay at home and watch TV because, I know depressed people don't want to get dressed and they don't want to go out and they don't want to face people. But gathering is what God counted on to defeat depression. He knows that there are strength in numbers, like I said last week, our study. And hiding at home in your pajamas is not what he commands. He commands us to be in fellowship and to attend worship, corporate worship, because we need each other. And, you may think being at home, you don't need us, but, we need you. We miss having people there, and we need to see everyone. You don't know how much you can encourage somebody by just being there. So, another thing is, we all send out texts all the time or messengers. But a emoji hug or a kiss, it does not quite feel the same as a real hug, from someone that loves you. And you cannot replace the presence of gathered believers with a remote control. Jeroboam told the people, it's too much for you to go to Jerusalem. And that sounds like it is today. It's too much. It's inconvenient. It's difficult. And, it's easier for people to accept what I want to say counterfeit worship, because if you choose the convenience of staying home and not going to the assembly, and choosing to watch rather than participate, then I say that's going to be counterfeit worship because it's going to weaken you. And, we're raising generations that are, we're making it to where they avoid difficulty at all costs. We're trying to make everything easy. We don't want them to go through what we did. We don't want them to have any hardships or any trouble. We just want all this peachy life, So, we tell them if it's hard, you can quit. If you don't like your baseball team, quit. If you, it's going to take a little bit of sacrifice, you don't have to. It's okay. If it requires, if something requires commitment, we replace it with comfort. And everyone else is doing it, then, it's okay. So just like we always hear about ball practice, if they're not going to the assembly on a Wednesday night and they're going to ball practice, then it's okay. God will overlook that. God understands. Well, how are we going to teach them to put God first in their life if we don't ever make them choose the hard? You know, it's our job to help them choose God over baseball or anything else. And we need to help them see that there's everlasting results to the decisions that they're making today. And, you know, everything in life requires effort and sacrifice. You know, strong marriages, good parenting, and getting to heaven. It requires effort and sacrifice. I'm going to go to David. I'm sorry, not David, Samuel. 2 Samuel. Oh, and if you're watching tonight, so Jenny Riley, I got a little envelope in the mail from you today, and thank you so much. She knows, and y'all have heard me talk about these things, these little magnetic bookmarks. She sent me some in the mail today, and I love them so much, so thank you very much for those. So 2 Samuel, and I just took off the bookmark I had saved. How funny. 24. So David says, "No, but I will surely buy it from you for a price, nor will I offer burnt offerings to the Lord my God, that which costs me nothing." So he's saying, it's going to cost something, you know. He doesn't want you to give him something free that he can then turn around and use as a sacrifice, because that means nothing to him. It didn't cost him anything. And so we got to be careful to make sure, you know, that, I mean, there is a cost, you know. It cost Jesus. Look what it cost him. You know, it cost his life. And we have the mindset that, you know, if it's cost too much, then we're not going to bother with it. Well, that mindset is destroying the whole country. You know, convenience is weakening families. It is weakening discipline, and it's weakening the church. We want instant everything. You know, microwave meals, drive-through dinners. Alexa, turn on my lights. Alexa, get my grocery list.
I couldn't find a list called grocery.
Told you. So anyway, but there's no effort. We want no effort spirituality. You know, we want to go to heaven, but we don't want to pay the price to get there. You know, we don't want to sacrifice, 3 times a week. We don't want to go Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. That's just too much. So, you know, and that's the danger today, is that we always want to choose the easy over what is right. And parents no longer want to fight the battle of raising children, you know, consistently in the church, because sports schedules are easier. That's what everybody else is doing. And you can send your kid off in a car with 2 or 3 other teammates, and you don't even have to go to the game. You know, we want easy. And so anyway, I guess I'm wanting to say, we don't ask anymore, is it biblical? We ask, is it convenient? And convenience is a terrible God, little g. And that's kind of what we treat it like. And spirituality, laziness is it's going to make you weak. You know, we weren't promised it was going to be easy. But Jesus said, take up your cross and follow me. A cross isn't comfortable. A cross isn't convenient. A cross is sacrifice. It takes effort to carry it. You know, the early church traveled miles together. Some hid in caves, and I was reading the other day that they actually used to think that the early church was a sex cult, because, you know, where it says they would greet one another with a kiss, they would like do that at the door, and then they would go into these secret meetings in homes. And so they thought that it was all this big private, you know, cult. And so anyway, you know, they really risked something to go to church. It cost them something. People died for it. People went to prison for it. And we can't get off the couch for it. You know, it's just our pajamas and watching having our coffee, you know, and watching, or even if we're at a sports game and we're trying to watch it on Facebook or YouTube, laying in our pool because it's the first Sunday that it's been nice and warm for me to lay out and get a tan so I can watch church from here. You know, all of that it's convenient. And it's putting us first, not God. So people will drive hours to go to ball games, to races, I know I'll drive to 2 hours to go shopping sometimes. Vacations. You know, but 2 to 3 times a week to church is just too much. You know, we have more access today to the Bible, to study guides, to maps, to books, to the internet, to learn history and foundations, more than they ever did. More proof, more everything, but we have so much less commitment. And the reason is because I think comfort's made us numb so slowly that we don't even realize it. We don't realize the lack of our attention to do what God's called us to do. You know, we think we're okay by putting in half the effort. You know, well, if I can't go, I'll just watch it on TV. It's not the same. It's not what He's called us to do. You know, the calves in First Kings there was a religious symbol. They were the gods. The feast looked religious. The altars looked religious. You know, but it was still rebellion, and it was totally against what God wanted, what He commanded. He commanded they go to Jerusalem to Him. And so it's just because something feels spiritual does not mean that it honors God. God chose Jerusalem to be the place they went, and He established worship in a specific manner. And Jeroboam decided that he created an easier substitute, and everybody else liked easy, so they went along with it. And a substitute gospel and substitute commitment is exactly what Satan's looking for. That is where he can destroy you completely, and he don't even have to take you out of your comfort to do it. You know, he just weakens you little by little, and until, you know, you don't even go at all. So that was, I went way off of what Jim said, but, you know, that was just the first thing I thought of when I heard of, you know, an alternate form of worship. My mind instantly went to Facebook and how many people have quit going to church altogether because they can watch it on TV. And it's just not the same. So anyway, I hope that encouraged somebody, and I will see you back next week. Have a good week. Bye.